Okay, why does your twin flame run away? Well, it doesn't have to do with psychology necessarily. I'd say that, hold on. So it doesn't have to necessarily to do with psychology. Um, and they don't run because you had an emotion or a thought about them. Like that's not what it is. Rather, they run because of the energy actually. Now, the energy will likely cause their mind, you know, to like their psychology to be a certain way, so in terms of like avoidant attachment or something like that, that's not what's happening because when they run, they're not doing it because of their psychology. Like they're not psychologically reacting, you know? They're not. So and also, whenever they do run, generally speaking, it's not even because anything happened between you two, necessarily like physically, but energetically. It's because there's things energetically happening that's why they run, right? Um, in further videos, I'll go into more in future videos. I'll go into more detail on like how that actually works. I'll explain that more. But basically, just know for right now that it's not because of psychology, and if you are experiencing that, you know, that back and forth where it's mostly about like what's going on, like where it's not even mostly where it's about what's happening between you two, and it's like a heavily psychologically driven dynamic. There's a pretty good chance that they're not your twin flame, but I'm not going to say that it's 100% because things like that will happen, especially if you're really dialed in on your psychology, you know? If you weren't necessarily dialed in on your psychology like that, but you were dialed into something else like your emotions, uh that's where you having a certain emotion and being really focused on it will cause them to be in. So it'll seem like, oh, it's because I felt something about them. And it's like, no, but it's because partially in a way it's like you're putting so much energy into that particular emotions, like into your emotions. You're putting so much energy into that particular emotion that it causes them to do the same thing. Like they have to literally follow you in that way where what you're giving credence to, they do too, except how they treat it is going to be in a way that's opposite to you so that they can shake you up out of it. But that feels like friction, like a weird kind of friction where it's like what you do, they literally do the opposite, you know? But it's like it's not even what you do in terms of towards or regarding them, but it's like just generally, it's weird. It's weird. But they'll do the opposite, you know? Where specifically if you're trying to like seek them through it, but if it just is there, and you're not, and it's not causing you to get stuck, maybe like it's like the kind of music that you like, you know something that don't really matter in that sense, or versus if it's like an addiction that you have, because like an addiction is going to affect, it's going to cause them to have one too. But their addiction is going to be something that triggers you psychologically, while yours is going to be one that triggers them to some degree. You guys just trigger each other because you're the same soul, and it's jarring even if like they're not acknowledging. Like it doesn't seem like they're acknowledging. I don't want you to say that it's not that they're not. It doesn't seem like they're acknowledging it in the way that you are, but it's like just even knowing actual facts about each other's lives like that is actually jarring. Like it's spiritually jarring. Whether you uh like regardless of what's going on in your mind, regardless of what's going on in your emotions, that experience of being around them and things happening, especially when you know about certain things that happen to them or that they're doing, or certain things about their situation, it's jarring spiritually, you know? It is. But it's like the kind of jarring that it goes beyond your like active processing out of it. So it's like it affects things without you necessarily noticing it, you know, just knowing certain things. Now, if you get stuck on it because of something that because you get disturbed psychologically by some of the things that uh that's when it they'll make a thing out of it too. And that's kind of how it goes. Where your energy goes, their focus goes, you know but whenever your energy goes to them, um it's not even like their focus goes to them too, because that does happen, and that's why it seems like they're like why they kind of act the way that they do. Now that does happen, but it's almost like they can't really focus on you when it's like that, because you're kind of giving it all to them, you know now trying to take it for yourself doesn't really work like that either, because generally speaking, whenever people are talking about doing that, they're speaking psychologically, and that's why things don't actually happen, you know because they're talking basically from their imagination, which is what I see a lot. I see a lot. I'm not going to name names right now, but that's what I see, you know and then people just saying things, like people just saying things, but it's like not at all a reflection of reality, and then they get discouraged because they're like, why isn't anything happening? If this was the case, then they would come back. And so then they start, if they really did meet their twin flame, they start to get discouraged and be like, oh well, the twin flame was, you just met them just to get activated, and that's it. And like, you know which they're just a catalyst, which is not true at all. Furthest thing from the truth, by the way. And I think they deep down they know that, but because of the total and complete and utter lack of anything actually happening, um, they're resigned to that conclusion because they don't have any other choice. Like nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. Regardless of what they say, what they believe, nothing's actually happening. That's because nothing changed. They're just saying. They're just. I don't know if they really actually believe it, because on some level they you can't, because nothing's different. You're saying all this stuff, but nothing is actually different. On some level, you even can't believe in it. Like deep down, you can't believe in it if it's not true, or if you don't believe it to actually be true. Because if it wasn't true and you believed it to be true, that's something, because you're open to being proven wrong. But the other way, it's like you're just basically full of it, and on some level, that you're full of it, but it hasn't the notion hasn't penetrated deeply enough for you to realize it. And then because you haven't realized that, you're basically chasing fake experience, and it keeps you stuck, and that's like a real stumbling block spiritually, actually. you know and this is why, you know the sage and the rishis and the yogis of past went out of their way to keep thing to either make th- to be either make things seem negative, spiritually speaking, because not putting any positives out there, but all just negatives, so as to not entice people's imaginations, or to just keep it from them entirely. Because what people do with their minds is somewhat um what people do with their minds is somewhat irresponsible, specifically whenever it comes to spiritual information, because of how dangerous that kind of stuff can be. Not like dangerous necessarily, usually not in the sense that it would cause harm to you or necessarily other people. Usually other people if it was harm. But it's like it's that it literally keeps you so stuck that you won't move. And it like you'd be better off if you had never heard that sort of thing. If you'd never heard anybody say anything about it. That's what a spiritual truth will do to you. Either that or it could cause your ego to break down. Specifically if you're told something that requires investigation and you do investigate. Anyway, that's the video. Peace out.